you're not just like hitting a metric or a KPI. You're taking the time to actually dig a little bit deeper.
Right. Learn about your business and, like you said, be more of that partner to you.
Yeah, exactly. Because there's so many of us out there. So it's like you gotta stand out a little bit.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of The Hiring State of Mind. Today we have a special guest on the show, Cassidy Wright. Cassidy is actually the Senior Talent Acquisition Manager for Fort Robotics. And coming on to today's show, she holds a lot of experience within recruiting, HR, and also talent acquisition. I definitely wanted to have her on to pick her brain a little bit about hiring practices, challenges she has within the HR realm, and more importantly, just get to know a little bit more about her. So, Cassidy, welcome to the show.
Thank you. So happy to be here.
Absolutely. We're happy to have you. So, I figured we'd jump right into it. And just by you talking a little bit about, your history and I guess maybe how you came into recruiting and let's just say HR.
Yeah, so I have been, I guess, in the industry now for a little bit over 8 years, and I actually got started in university recruiting for a company that was called at the time Tarico Holidays, which is now actually called Hotel Bed. So it was an amazing position right out of college. Got to travel around, do a lot of career fairs domestically and internationally, where I was brought in to really build out a lot of the sales programs for the company. So really recruiting in top graduates from, the different universities that we targeted, and did that for a couple of years. And then I actually chose to go into staffing, which I know is always, people always laugh at that, but I really wanted to get my feet wet. I credit that 4 years I did with Kforce a ton because it's all about sourcing, cold calling, interviewing, really learning about the candidate experience and client relationship. I worked with our clients specifically in the Orlando area, which at the time is where I was living, and I was partnered with them in their vertical technology department. So I worked with Universal Studios, Walt Disney, some of our healthcare clients, and I think that's really where I found my passion for technology. So after doing that for, I think it was about 4 years, I was with Kforce. I wanted to work for a company that really focused in technology. So that's how I kind of fell into the startup that I currently work for today, which, like you mentioned, is Fort Robotics. So what we build is a first of its kind robotics control platform. So we really bring robot builders and users that safe, secure, and dynamic control of their machines. So was totally different from the last two roles I just mentioned because I came into essentially nothing. So it was a very building, heavily focused role where I came in, was a thought partner with our VP of people to really kind of build out talent acquisition, what that looks like for Fort, what that really means from candidate experience, interviewing, and so on. And then, like you said too, obviously working for a startup, I wear a lot of hats. So I've been diving in the last 2 years too with operations and HR and doing all the things.
Nice. Very well-versed background there.
Yes, a little bit of everything. Staffing, in-house, university recruitment.
Absolutely. I actually have been in the staffing and recruitment industry for the past 13 years.
It's amazing. I loved it. Like, I loved my time doing it. It's a lot of work, but I think it really makes a good recruiter because you learn
100%.
all the things.
100%. 100%. And right now I'm the owner of my own recruiting firm. So,
That's amazing.
as you mentioned, wearing a lot of hats, I'm constantly doing that on a day-to-day basis. I get involved I sometimes have to put on my accounting hat, sometimes have to put on my HR hat, as well as recruiting hat. So I know exactly what you mean coming from, the startup that you're operating at right now.
Yeah, it takes a lot of mental capacity, but it's fun. You have that entrepreneurial, spirit for startup and a business owner. Very similar.
Absolutely. Cool. Well, I want to kind of touch on Kforce a little bit. So
Yeah.
obviously you were doing recruiting there, and I saw you spent a lot of years there. I think I saw you actually did IT recruiting as well, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So talk to me a little bit about how recruiting was for you then, and maybe how it's changed since then, and how you're doing it now.
Yeah, I think the biggest difference, from Kforce to kind of where I'm at now is really the fast pace, I think, of just connecting with candidates, getting the rundown on really their skills and background, and really trying to get them marketed out as fast as you possibly can to, maybe one client or all different clients. And I think back then it was a little bit more faster in the sense of the process of getting to know the candidate and getting them out. And nowadays I feel like we're really kind of shifting more into candidate experience, what that looks like, taking a little bit more time, especially a little bit more on the in-house position that I'm in now. Really making sure we're understanding, the candidate's values. Is that really matching up with our organizational culture, our mission, and our vision? I would say those are the two biggest kind of differences. Where Kforce, obviously, it's sales based, so has a little bit more of that transactional kind of fast pace. Where now I get to slow down a little bit and really say, hey, they're going to be in my organization for quite some time, so I really want to make sure they're going to be, the absolute right fit that we need.
It's funny you say that. I think even in the recruiting industry, staffing industry today, it's changed in that capacity as well. So I think you hit the nail on the head when you said that. I think one of the reasons that is the case too is because we're so much in more of a candidate driven market now. Would you say that?
Yes. Yeah, I would say most definitely candidate driven market. It's all about recruitment marketing. It's all about what the company is putting out there, whether it's a staffing agency or an actual, corporate organization, startup organization. What are people saying about your company, right? And it's how you're kind of showcasing that, how you're treating candidates. The biggest thing at Kforce was we always wanted to follow up. We always wanted to make sure our candidates are feeling really, welcomed and, taken care of. And it's the same way. I think it's gotten even more important, through these last couple of years with all of the layoffs. People are frustrated. People are frustrated with the broken process. And I think a company can really stand out in this market by how they're treating people, in that pipeline and in that process all around.
100%. I mean, I see it daily. I think that's what differentiates a lot of recruiting firms from others is, the timely responses, the way they're treating their individuals, and candidates take a liking towards that because if you can differentiate yourself from your competition, then more people are just going to come towards you. It's like in any industry, right?
Yeah, and it's the simplest thing. It's just, hey, we didn't hear back, but I want to keep working with you. Like, and it's like a two-sentence touch point that can make a difference, on you as a recruiter and then the candidate. So I totally agree with you.
100%. And even same thing on the client end, sometimes I'm sure you can attest to this. Sometimes as recruiters, we don't really hit maybe deadlines we'd like to, or we're not getting candidates in a timely fashion, right? Because I don't know, maybe the market is, saturated with a certain type of skill set, whatever it might be, right? But keeping the client in mind and letting them know, hey, haven't forgotten about you. We're still working on this position for you, and just keeping them in the know, I think, is key too.
Yeah, and just being honest. One of the things that I always did was like, you know what, I haven't heard back from client X. And I'm just being real with you. And people were like, well, thanks for just letting me know. You don't always have to have all the answers. I think just keeping people in the loop of everything totally helps.
Thank you for sharing that perspective. I don't think a lot of people understand how important that is within the recruiting industry, and especially if you're a job seeker and you're hearing this, like it's key. Like it's key that you keep that in mind that there are people out there that do care about what we're doing and making sure that you do find employment.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, so I guess while working at Kforce, because I've been in the industry like I mentioned for 13 years, and I know it's a roller coaster industry. You have your ups and downs. You said it's very fast paced, which is true. For you, what were some of those, I guess you could say, challenges that you experienced while you were at Kforce, and then also maybe things that led you to kind of stay within this industry for as long as you've been within it?
That's a great question. I mean, there's so many challenges, I feel like, that you kind of come across. I think, the challenges from a K Force perspective was having maybe not so much information, like not having the full picture on, maybe the culture and the interview team and the process, and really just trying to find the best fit that you possibly can with what you have. And still really making sure that the hiring managers you're working with like understand your process and understand also where you're coming from. I think what's really kept me in the industry for this long is people. I absolutely love working with people, and I think we're so caught up in the day to day that sometimes you forget you really truly are helping people, get those salary increases, get them a position, whether it's they just need a position for right now, or if it's for like a long term type of thing, like for instance with Fort Robotics. So it's a great industry to be in. I think it's really evolving, the talent acquisition and HR industry. I don't even really like calling it HR anymore because we're so many different things. We're organizational development, we're leadership, we're learning and development, we're talent acquisition. Like we are literally everything you could possibly think of. So it's always evolving, it's always changing, even though there's so many layoffs happening across the board in talent acquisition. We are awesome people who can always be utilized in some sort of way. It's just making sure you understand how to really showcase your transferable skills, when you are out there in the marketplace. So at the end of the day, people is the short answer.
So yeah, I can definitely attest, Cassidy. I think that people is definitely one of the reasons I've stayed in the industry for as long as I've been. But also, I think the fact that it's very rewarding what we do, and the fact that we actually are, essentially putting food on people's tables. And I think that that's one of the reasons that also has kept me in this industry for as long as I've been in it. So, long story short, it is people though.
Right. Yeah, you have to love connecting with people. If you don't, it's probably not the right industry for you.
Absolutely, absolutely. Um, so obviously, K-Force, IT recruiting, then I guess you obviously moved into a position where you are currently right now, senior talent acquisition manager at Fort Robotics. So talk to me a little bit about how talent acquisition is different from maybe recruiting.
Yeah, I think talent acquisition, encompasses a lot more. I was kind of thinking about this the other day. I came in as a recruiter and I've become a strategist. So you are shifting your mindset from, maybe just getting job requisitions, sourcing, getting your candidates submitted, and moving on with the day. And it's more encompassing strategy for the organization overall. So, how are you kind of looking at retention? How are you looking at performance management? How are you looking at their career growth? So, you're taking a candidate and you're really trying to see them as a whole picture on how they're fitting into that organization. And I would say that's a little bit more of the talent acquisition piece. You're really kind of thinking a little bit of everything, like I mentioned earlier, like learning and development. You have the HR piece of it, and you're really trying to just kind of make this candidate a culture add into your organization. So, I would say though, recruiters, there's a lot out there that are doing this now, whether they're in staffing or they're in an organization. I think, talent acquisition has a lot to just that recruiter title, but it's kind of like, how are you shifting your mindset to be just a recruiter who does their day in and day out to more of that strategist who's really thinking about the long term, whether it's for your client or for your organization that you're working with.
Yeah, that's very true. One of a couple weeks back, we actually had a guest on the show, and we spoke about just how dynamic the recruiting, talent acquisition, human resources industries are. Like I don't know too many other industries that you're responsible for speaking to candidates, then you're speaking to clients, then you're sometimes providing like benefits and information to candidates as well, and then from there you're also responsible for training and development and also onboarding. So it's a very dynamic industry, and I think a lot of people don't even understand how dynamic it can be because you could also be responsible for like administrative work as well. So it's a good point that you mentioned. Cool. Right now, I guess, coming from K Force and obviously being, senior talent acquisition manager now, I know you said it's a startup company, but do you guys utilize any like recruiting firms or temporary employees?
Yeah, so when I came in, that's all they were using. So we didn't have obviously anyone in talent acquisition. I came in as the 30th employee, realized we just were using external vendors, staffing agencies. So I was really brought in to do a lot of the cost saving with what they were doing. So I think in the beginning of Fort's history, it was amazing for utilizing staffing agencies, getting our engineering department up and running, getting some of those key players in. But as of right now, we don't. So I am myself, and then I have one team member on board with us. So we are also not hiring a ton. It's been that slow drip over the last 2 years. So as of right now, we're very capable, in terms of filling those job requisitions. But I think, being a Series A to a Series B company, hopefully to a Series C and beyond, in the startup world, I think it's one of those things where, we'll start to kind of shift our mindset and think more about the skill based, which I think is where a lot of our contractors and our contractor needs will come in. So it's never say never. I think for right now, we're doing what we need to do, but I think for growth in the future, I love to push the contractor side of things because, if we're not really knowing the vision or we're trying out a new project for a client or some of our new things, like I was saying, I think, contract workers are going to be pivotal for Fort in the future. I think it was super important in the beginning stages of the company. Obviously, I was brought in to kind of slow down some of those costs and the needs. And then, I think where we're at right now and where we're going, it's definitely a conversation. Being a startup, we're always doing new projects and trying new things. So I think contract needs, will definitely come available.
Gotcha. And I'm curious to know, being that you're now in senior talent acquisition, have you ever had the experience of working with a recruiting firm before? Like, obviously, you came from that industry and came from that side of the business, but have you ever had the experience of working with another recruiter before?
Yeah, a ton. So, like I said, when I came in to Fort, they were pretty much just solely utilizing different staffing agencies. So, came in, got to introduce myself, be kind of the point of contact for things, and finish up some of the hiring that I walked into, with Fort. Yeah, I love that I have been on both sides because, like I said, I absolutely loved my staffing agency experience, and I, have the most respect for any recruiter, any talent acquisition person on either side of the game. So, coming in and having the experience, from my previous employer, it was awesome. We got to connect and laugh about things, and it just brought like a different human connection, to the relationship. So, yes, I definitely have.
Perfect. Yeah, that's the one experience I've never had. I've always been in staffing and recruitment, so being on the other side, I can only imagine what it's like and how you get inundated with probably messages and phone calls from recruiters and sales reps. So I guess for you, being on that side now, I'm always curious to know because I'm still in the staffing and recruitment industry world. For you, like what is that determining factor for you that makes you say, okay, I'm going to work with company A as opposed to company B or C?
Yeah, I think it's just making again that connection with someone, instead of the cold call email, which, like, listen, hey, you got to do some cold call emails and phone calls, right? But it's like, instead of just emailing, I think the worst is people will email about a position we had like posted a month ago. And sometimes I'm just like, if you actually went on our job website, it's not there anymore. So clearly you're not paying attention, to what's going on in the business. So I think what stands out is, having that business knowledge. You've maybe been reading some of our LinkedIn posts. You'll make a actual business case in an email versus just like, here's a DevOps engineer, right? I mean, there's so many DevOps engineer. I can go find one on LinkedIn Recruiter. So it's like, what's the difference of working with you versus me just doing a 30-minute search? I think really having, oh, hey, I've been keeping up with Fort for quite some time. I've noticed you guys have a 6% growth in the last couple months. Like, would be so interested in getting on a quick call and like learning a little bit about the business and what you guys do instead of approaching it from, here's a candidate, I can help you source. And it's like, okay, so can everyone else, So it's like being more of that thought partner, that business partner, I think is what stands out to me personally. But I think that differs for every company, right? If they're trying to hire a ton and they just got to get some people in, that not might be the case, But I think it's finding out who you're speaking to is important, too. What do they care about?
And I guess for all the recruiters and sales reps that are out there, I know in today's world, it's like, cold calls, they're not really that prevalent as they were probably when you were actually, in recruiting and staffing, let's just say. Today, it's like most managers, don't really pick up their phones for these recruiters or staffing sales reps. So, when you get an email or a LinkedIn message, what makes you want to say, all right, let me respond to this one? Is there something that kind of captures your attention about those emails?
Yeah, so what catches my attention, like I was mentioning, is just a little bit more of that time on focusing about the business. So, again, instead of just like, here's a candidate, I can help you with sourcing, it's that, okay, do they understand what Fort Robotics does? Like, are they keeping up with what we're posting about? I think in an email that stands out even if it's like a call out, on, hey, I saw this review or I saw XYZ happen at the company. Like, we could kind of help be a partner to maybe enhance or grow, or, like I said, just a little bit more of that business knowledge, because it shows that you're not just like hitting a metric or a KPI. You're taking the time to actually dig a little bit deeper.
Right. Learn about your business and, like you said, be more of that partner to you.
Yeah, exactly. Because there's so many of us out there, so it's like you gotta stand out a little bit.
Absolutely, absolutely. So right now, obviously, senior talent acquisition manager at Fort Robotics. I know you said it's a startup right now at this point. But how often are you involved in hiring on a day-to-day basis now?
Yeah, pretty involved. Every day we're talking about, whether it's the growth. I'm involved in a little bit more of the organizational kind of structure and development of a department, and really kind of working with our director of people operations on what does that next position look like, what is the business telling us we need, and then I'm working with, my direct report on kind of building out what that looks like, from the interview process to the sourcing process. So we've been super heavily involved since day one. I think I will say most recently getting my HR certification. I'm taking a little bit more step into that HR world. So I would say I think moving forward, I'll probably be focusing a little bit more on that side versus talent acquisition in the day in and day out. But I also think it's whatever the business needs. So, tomorrow, if we need to go out and hire, 30 something people, then I'm going to switch back into my talent acquisition, hat. So I think it's just, for me personally, working for a startup, it's really what the business needs. But I've been involved since day one on a lot of the development, with talent here at Fort.
Now, one of the questions we typically like to ask most of our guests that come on the show is how are you actually retaining top talent now?
Yes. So I think besides, career development and compensation and the best benefits, I think my top two on how you can retain great talent is having a strong leadership team. I think if you have a strong leadership team, then your employees are going to be completely bought into your organization. If they believe in your leadership capabilities, your styles, if they believe in the mission and the vision, and they can see themselves as a part of that, I think that's the number one thing. You can have an amazing salary, but if they are not bought in on the leadership team and the values of that organization, they're not going to be there for a while. And then I think really too, it comes down to just caring. And it's so simple, but it's truly caring about your people. Again, you can have all the money in the world, but if you feel like you are literally not cared for, you're just a number in an organization. Where is the fun in that? Where's the growth in that? So I think, really having one-on-ones with your employees and showing them that they're a part of this mission, you care about them, asking them what they're liking, what they don't, I think it can go very far in retaining people.
Absolutely. That's a really good point. For you, since you mentioned you're very involved with the hiring, what traits or qualities do some of maybe your best hires that you've ever had possess?
Yeah, so besides like our organizational values, so we have a whole interview process where we just focus on our values and how our candidates are kind of showing up in those values. I would say just the adaptability, wearing multiple hats, candidates that aren't scared to maybe come in with their job description that says A, but then they're going to have to pivot and do a little bit of B and C. So someone that's really versatile, is a go-getter, has a really positive attitude, and again, is just really bought in on the mission and vision of Fort. Obviously, we're moving so fast-paced that we need people who are passionate and who believe in what we're doing, because at the end of the day, a startup doesn't survive without their investors. So you have to be completely bought in and sold on what you're really trying to do.
For the candidates that you are interviewing nowadays, I'm sure you probably are getting involved with interviews, whether it be virtually or in person. Um, I always like to ask everyone this: what's your favorite interview question to ask someone?
I always like to ask, what value of ours really hit home for you, and that just kind of shows me, did they actually go and read our mission and vision statement? Did they read about our values, or were they just really reading the job description to prepare for the job? So I think that really stands out. We like to look at our people and say, they're great in this value, and this team is really shining in this value. So it's in the interview process, we're really trying to look for people who could be a culture add and not a culture fit. So I think seeing if they're looking at our values and really looking at the mission and vision statement, that's what I always like to ask.
Absolutely, that's a great question. It kind of shows whether or not someone is actually doing their homework, right? So it's a great one. Um, and I guess, one of my last questions that I have for you, being that you're interviewing and involved with hiring and just have so many years of experience and knowledge within the industry, what's maybe one piece of advice that you would give to a job seeker today?
I mean, it's an uphill battle right now, I think, across the board. But, my best advice would really be adaptable, show those transferable skills, be open to maybe a position that's titled not necessarily like what your background is in, and then network a ton. Every position I've ever got is because I reached out on LinkedIn, introduced myself, tried to go the extra mile. I think if you're just really open to opportunities, they'll come to you. But if you kind of put yourself in this box or a job title or a job description, there's so many other people that are doing that. So it's like, if you can have a little bit of an open mind on your career and where you're going, I think it definitely helps.
Great piece of advice for all the job seekers that are out there today. I think, it's about being more proactive than reactive. And then also, I think when you're looking for a job, you've heard this all the time as well. It's a full-time job when you're looking for a
Yes.
job. So you have to really also kind of differentiate yourself from all the job seekers that are out there.
Yeah. It's time consuming, but to your point, another piece of advice is tailor those resumes. You want to tailor them, make sure you're hitting on those, job descriptions, the qualifications, tailoring every resume. It's so time consuming, but it does make the difference.
Absolutely. And tailoring it to the position that you're actually applying for, right? So 100%. Perfect. Well, Cassidy, this was great. I really appreciate you coming onto the show today and giving us some of your perspective within the industry. For everyone that would like to get in touch with you out there, how can they get in touch with you?
LinkedIn. LinkedIn's the best way. So if they just put first name, last name, and then Fort Robotics, I should pop up. So
And this is, obviously just another episode of the Hiring State of Mind. Please like, comment, subscribe to the video, and I'm sure we can look to have more awesome guests just like Cassidy on the show.